Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Real Talk, Real Leaders, powered by CMD. I'm your host, Shauna Griffiths. And today we're going to talk about something that you probably have heard me talk about if you're a listener or if you know me, which is doing something that means something. And one day I don't know what I was doing at my desk, and I put up this little sign. So it's very cheesy, but it just says that, do something that means something. And it's a lot about being the change that we want to see, which is so much of what sparked me to want to create this series. And so today we have the absolute honor and privilege of speaking with someone who has created a career and a journey and her evolution around doing exactly that. So it is absolutely my pleasure to welcome Rachelle Patel from Laureus Sport for Good to the show today. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Excited to speak about my journey and all the amazing things that are happening in the social impact space.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have had quite a run at Laureus, but also before that in this lane of doing things that make a global impact. And I should have said this a moment ago, you're the director of marketing and partnerships for Laureus. So we'll get into your evolution at Laureus in a little bit, but can you tell us, like, when you were coming up and you were coming out of school, and like what made you want to follow this type of journey for your career?
Yeah, definitely. So I think from a pretty young age, I knew I wanted to do something that would help people. And I think I knew I wanted to do something around the nonprofit space, whether it's directly in it, but something that was working for a cause and mission driven in that way. It just so happened that my first job out of college was with the British consulate in New York City. And I was there, I was working on global partnerships. So I think that was great that I got a taste of kind of amazing organizations that were doing work to support causes across the world. And I think knowing that that space existed and knowing how many people were actively trying to improve the world, whether locally in their communities, through governments, through education, at a national or international level, inspired me to definitely want to stay in the field where there were so many amazing people doing that work. And when I was growing up, I was always playing sports. It was a huge part of my but I didn't really think of it, honestly, as a career. It was something I enjoyed doing. It was a hobby. But when I was at the British consulate, I had the chance to work on a program called Premier Skills, which really combined sport and youth development. And that's kind of where my career has gone from there. And when I saw that those two things could be combined in such a meaningful and impactful way, it was I wanted to kind of focus because I felt it brought things I'm passionate about, as well as gave me a chance to make a tangible difference for youth and communities. And so it was kind of that spark that then put me on the path in sport for development. And I think since then, I've been able to be connected with amazing organizations that are in this field and see what a big field it is and how expansive it is. Also kind of small, how well people know each other in this space. And I think once you that power of sport, it's easy to apply whether you're in the sport for development field or you're just someone who enjoys watching sports or who enjoys playing sports. You're able to start to see all the things that sport can provide.
Yeah, I love when you talk about it that way because, you know, when I was coming up, I played sports in college and I worked in sports for a long time, but it wasn't until later when I got to the agency side that I really started seeing that there was this whole other area to sport. And so, you know, it's great for me to have seen a bit of the evolution of this type of work. And, you know, I didn't say this earlier, but we had I had the opportunity to work with you at one point when I was on the agency side at Laureus. And so, I mean, that was like an eye-opening moment for me. So it's just been great to see. So, and when you were when I was working for you all at that time, I think you were in the PR seat. So you've actually had quite an evolution and a growth during your time there. And as I said earlier, you're in the marketing and partnership seat now, which is my favorites. So tell us, like, what's the work that you're doing now, and even kind of what led you back to that partnership side and, you know, and more to that marketing lane?
Yeah, so I think to create impact, partnerships are key. We talk about this a lot, but to create impact, you have to have the folks on the ground at the center. There needs folks that have access to resources that are helping to move that along, and then people who are able to help amplify that. And so I think pretty much everything that we do at Laureus is partnering in one way or another. And so even when I started off, and I originally actually started kind of in a development fundraising role, done events, worked, kind of on the marketing side, on the athlete side. And I think just at the heart of it was what is going to help drive impact for Laureus. And also I think those who have worked in nonprofit industry understand that you also just have to wear many hats and part of the gig. And it's also an opportunity for leadership development. I think I've been able to learn so much because of, Laureus, we're only 10 people and we serve, the entire US. We're part of a global network. And so it's allowed me to take initiative in areas that I think will, if I, focus effort and energy here, it'll improve the work that the foundation is doing, help us to create more impact. And I think partnerships have become so crucial to that because especially now, people are recognizing the importance of social impact, and more companies are wanting to show how they're making a difference and wanting to, I think a change that's been nice is maybe wanting to learn a little bit more too. So I think it's still a mix, and there's definitely, still brands out there that are maybe more about making the splash, but I think people are recognizing, especially the people that work there, that authenticity is super important. Anything that's done. And so more and more people are actually wanting to understand, how can I truly make an impact in the area that I'm interested in? And what's also exciting is sport is starting to get ability as a tool for youth development. Right. It's not, something that you need to be an elite athlete to have an impact. It's not just something fun to do, although I think we could do a bit more with focusing on the fun of it, to be honest, but it's also something that is a huge life skill developer. And it's something that you provide that access in particular to those in low income families or from different backgrounds and under-resourced communities, it can be a game changer in the trajectory of their life. And so I think that's what's helped kind of evolve me throughout Laureus, is just where can I be that is continuing to drive impact and create partnerships that are creating impact for those on the ground. And because I've been able to be part of that small team, it's allowed me to wear a few of those hats and ultimately do my job better. Now, I have a responsibility for telling Laureus's story in our external platforms. And I really feel like I understand what that means because I've, been in so many different jobs before this. That helps me understand, okay, when we talk about the power of sport from a Laureus perspective, this is what we mean.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing I think is interesting when you're talking about the authenticity piece, when you and I were talking recently and you were saying about how you really do create these tailored brand partnerships, and we can get to this in a little bit later, but I think that is part of the magic of the authenticity that you all bring to the table, because just as earlier I said, a lot of times people, when they think about sport, they don't think about this type of a lane when they're talking about career. Similarly, when a lot of times when people think about partnership, they're just thinking of it from a buy into existing assets or, kind of an awareness play. But I think the fact that, as you talked about, you create these truly bespoke engagements that work for the brand, but then have that impact at that grassroots level is so critical to, to delivering that authenticity. So that's awesome. And something for people to keep in mind as you're thinking about the space of Laureus and brand partnerships. So you also mentioned a minute ago something that brought me back to the words of Nelson Mandela, which I know is someone who started Laureus, where he's partly behind it. And that is about like your focus being on changing like the power of sport to change lives. Is that right? Yeah. So it started there, right? So talk to us now that we know a bit about your evolution with respect to Laureus. Tell us a bit about the Laureus evolution and, where have you gone from that start to what you're doing today, and really looking to maximize the impact on those key markets that you do?
Yeah, for sure. As far as founding patrons go, I think, we couldn't have had a better one in Nelson Mandela. And he truly inspired Laureus through his words, obviously through his actions as well. But he talked about the power of sport to change the world, the power it has to unite, how it speaks to youth in a language that they understand. And so I think from those words, really kind of at the heart of what Laureus is trying to do is we're trying to improve the lives of youth and unite communities through that power of sport. We were set up fairly uniquely as far as a foundation when we were first set up. We're not an endowed foundation. We're not a foundation that is getting in, a set amount of funding every year from kind of an endowment. We're constantly fundraising for all the funds back in the community. So we act in this intermediary role. But what we wanted to be sure of is that we weren't just coming in and creating something new or reinventing the wheel, that we were truly empowering local communities, because that's where the real change is happening. And, honestly, sport and youth development is nothing new. It's been happening for years. I think the field is a little bit new. The terminology that's being used is new, but there have been leaders in communities who have been doing this work for years and years and years. And what we want to do is we want to find these organizations that are existing in these communities, invest in them, not only financially, but also through capacity building and training and development, and also by bringing them together with others who have a similar goal in mind about increasing access to sport for youth, particularly from under-resourced communities. And so I think our evolution has been just getting closer to that mission, is finding the best way to do that is by partnering with these local organizations. So a big part of what we do is provide grants to these smaller organizations that may not be well known to some of the larger funders and corporates. But I think a big piece of what we do well is being a leader in the sport for development and sports-based youth development. So if we can add credibility to sport as that tool for youth development, even if we're not directly funding everyone who's doing it, they'll hopefully be able to get some of that shine of understanding why sport is such a powerful tool, and others wanting to invest and be part of that journey. So I think it's both leading the space and it's also investing in those that are doing the work on the ground.
Got it. And when you talk about the work on the ground, I mean, considering what we've all been through in the last year and a half plus, I suppose, with COVID and the impact it really has hit people at the ground level, and a lot of times in some of these marginalized communities, to an extreme, and it really did put a lot of halt to a lot of the sport that was going on. So were there things that really impacted you all with the way you were operating? Were there any pivots you had to take during COVID that are kind of shaping what you're doing now?
Yeah, definitely. I think oftentimes when awful things like this happen, it affects those who are already sometimes suffering the most. And so I think that was definitely the case for some of these communities. And I think that's also something that's important to understand about these organizations, is that they're doing so much more than providing work for these kids. They're providing safe spaces, caring adult mentors. They're providing help with education and employability skill training. And so many of our programs found ways to pivot to still support their families in a virtual way. Of them did help with just those basic needs of, okay, actually, these kids just need food delivery, they need access to internet. But, once some of those immediate needs were handled, it's how can we continue to provide that connection? I think we all felt how connected everything was for those first, 6-8 months, still, like you said, going day. And so how can they help those kids dealing with traumas of everything that's happening in the world still have a time to connect with caring adult mentors, with their peers, and just provide a little bit of joy in their day, right? And maybe some games to get physically active. And so we pivoted to support both programs that were doing that, and then also to support coaches and staff that now as well very much isolated. And early on, we launched the Laureus virtual training camp, which was an online platform that allowed for coaches and staff who were supporting these kids to actually invest in themselves as well and others, and discuss what are the challenges, what tools are you using to make sure that you're connecting with kids, what are you doing from a self-care perspective, and that was extremely successful, and that was a direct result of listening to what those people on the ground needed, right? Also launched a Sport for Good response fund to help some of these programs just make it through the pandemic with cuts to their budget and loss of funding, and making sure that some of those immediate needs were met. So we're able to give out grants to organizations across the world to help them kind of last through that time. And I think for us, the big piece, in terms of everything that we did was that we listened. I think that was what made us so successful in a lot of these efforts. Was we knew what challenges we were facing, but we wanted to hear directly from our partners what challenges they were facing and how we could best support them with the resources that we had. And so I think it became even more important to listen to what it was needed, because that's constantly changing, right? In a world where different challenges are popping up, and also keeping some enjoyment in people's lives as a place for them to connect with people in their network.
Yeah, absolutely. As you're talking, it's making me think of, just the fact that I was saying this recently about how there's never been a time, I don't think, that this type of work is more needed. And I don't say that because it wasn't needed before. It's just that people are, whether it's because, people have been inactive, or it's like, what the heck are we supposed to do? And it affects kids, but it was also affecting adults during, being this very cooped up type environment. But it's also with all the tragedy that we've heard has happened to some athletes. So I think it's like, I just love, what you are doing, especially given this time, just in the world that we're facing. And so, actually the mention of athletes also reminds me to ask you about all the work, like you've been able to work with some pretty awesome athletes and celebrities. And so what's the role that they have with you all?
Yeah, so really since inception, athletes have played a huge role in the work of Laureus and what we do. There was about 20 iconic athletes in the room when Nelson Mandela first gave that speech, and they kind of formed Laureus and have served as ambassadors, academy members, board members moving forward. And I think as many athlete relationships as we have, that's how different the support looks. And I think that's a huge piece that athlete activism has been around for so long. And there's been doing amazing work, and Laureus helps provide a platform for them to continue to do things that they're passionate about and showcase why sport is this powerful tool. So for Laureus, we have athletes who we work with and we partner with to bring them to some of the programs that we support. And so we have an opportunity for the kids to hear firsthand from someone like an Allison Felix about not just, her journey as an athlete, but her journey as a woman, and empowering women and girls, and the importance of finding your truth and finding your voice. We have the opportunity to work with athletes that are just coming up and now, very much in the spotlight, like Naomi Osaka, who wanted to give back, and so are able to do that through Laureus. She actually set up a fund under Laureus Play Academy of Osaka, and channeling support to specifically help girls have access to sport in communities that matter to her, right? So in Tokyo and in Los Angeles and in Haiti. And I think we want to find a way to partner with athletes that actually just drives their passions and helps showcase the mission of that power of sport. And we've been lucky to work with different athletes across the board who are doing it by giving up their time, of their resources, of their platform to help inspire that next generation, and not just, showcase what it means to be an elite athlete, but what it means to be a good person, right? I think that's the ultimate thing that we look for working with an athlete is, what is that impact they're trying to have, off the field or off the court or off the mat. Great experience. We've had a chance to work with awesome athletes.
That's incredible. It's just so great to be able to help, give them a platform that fits, again, that bespoke idea where you're creating it so it's super authentic and they get to, really bring something forth that represents what they're trying to do, as you said, like off the field of play as well. So before I let you go, I do have to ask just one more about brand partners, because I know it's a big part of what fuels all of you. And so what makes for a good brand partner for you? What kind of, I know you have the opportunity to work with, some pretty high profile brands, but what do you really look for in those type of relationships?
Yeah. So I think this has definitely evolved a lot. And I think, speaking of, this is Real Leaders, I think that's something that evolved a lot with me just as a leader, is like being able to stand in the truth of knowing what a good partnership is now, and not afraid to push back when maybe that's not happening. And it's made partnerships so much better. And I think it's made the impact on the ground so much stronger. So we work with a lot of corporate partners. And I think a big thing is being very clear on the onset with what impact you're trying to accomplish. And so, I think whatever partnership, there needs to be grounded in some sort of community or social impact that needs to be a piece of that partnership for us, right? That's our mission. That's what we're trying to do. But don't be afraid to also say what other impact needs to be had, whether it's, I need the employees to feel connected to this, make sure that we're getting out certain stories from a marketing side. I think sometimes brands are afraid to be honest with those expectations up front, and it makes for some harder conversations on the back end of, well, we didn't realize we were going to need to get 10 photos from this or 12. And I think if people are just upfront, actually, you can still accomplish a lot of that, right? And when you have that impact you're trying to achieve centralized. we've had one partnership that we've had the chance to start working on recently that's been great to be a part of, is a partnership with Gatorade.
Okay.
They have a huge brand in sport. They're super well respected. But what's been really powerful about that partnership is that they've trusted our expertise in community and social impact. In particular, they had an interest in increasing access to sport for Black youth. So when we spoke to them about there's, you could do that in a lot of ways, but one ways that would be super powerful and super meaningful in the communities that you're looking at is investing in organizations that are also Black led. So they're able to see that it's, members of the community leading that org, they're reaching some of the hardest to reach youth, and they're having that long-term impact, right? It's not just a kid who goes to a camp and then, they're in these communities day in, day out for years, helping develop these kids and really making sure that we're not just increasing access to sport, but the kids are getting the benefits of that. And Gatorade was really great about listening to our recommendations of which organizations are doing that well in communities, who they should invest in, and of saying, what assets do we have that they need? Having the marketing side from a videographer, from a photographer, on social media, those are huge assets to organizations that they often don't have themselves. And so being able to not only provide the grants, but also provide some of that wraparound support from a brand lens. And I think because they end up getting the marketing shine naturally because of that. Right. When you ask a program who's hosting an event what they need, and they tell you, oh, they need, product donation, then automatically you're going to see the Gatorade bottles all throughout the basketball court, right? But that was really a response to a need that the community had. And so I think it's about the setting expectations, about the honesty, ensuring that you're clear on what community impact you want to have, but also know other things you're trying to achieve, and then letting the in the different areas be the experts, right? So when you should be listening to the corporate who has expertise in the lens, or to the community partner, or to that group that you've hired to really help nurture the partnership. Yeah,
it's so great the way you spoke about it. And again, as you were talking, authenticity that word just kept playing for me, because the way you're talking about it truly is that listening, that making it work for all parties, and sometimes that give and take during the relationship of we need a little more of this, or that's not really working. And, that's truly what a partnership should be. So this has been so great to have you come and share your story and the story of Laureus. So everybody who's listening, hope that you got a bit of the touch of the magic here as well. And so, Rachelle, what's the best way if people want to find out about Laureus, get in touch with you from a personal standpoint, how they can get involved, or from a brand standpoint? What's the best way for people to do that?
Yeah, so definitely go on our website, laureus.com. That's LAUREUS USA.com. And then follow us on social media. It's at Laureus_USA. On our website, you can reach out to us via email. You can also reach out to us via social media. But I think, the most important thing for this field and for this industry is for people to do what they can to increase access to sport for youth in their communities. And they can do that in so many different ways. You can do that by obviously donating and investing to programs that are doing that. You can do that by ensuring that the agencies that are putting together the rules and regulations around sport are listening to the needs of the community and understanding what it means for sport to truly be accessible and to be safe. If you have kids that you are touching, yourselves through parent or teacher, ensure that you're centering youth voice and fun in that experience, and them what it is that they want to do and what it is that they want to develop, and really focusing on that youth development piece, and not just the X's and O's of the games. And those two combined, it'll be incredible what you see sport can do for your community and for the world at large.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much. We've got probably a busy day ahead of you to make all this stuff happen, so we'll let you go. But thanks again, Rachelle, so much. Have an awesome day.
Thanks, Shauna. Thanks for having me.